Hi everybody, it's Barb, and I wanted to share with you today some ideas for revising Essay 3 based on some common errors or even just common mistakes that people were making on their drafts that they turned in over the last week or so. I think the biggest problem I saw with Essay 3 wasn't the content, but instead was really understanding what needed to happen within this essay. So I've split the essay into two different sections. For me, it's easy to think about essay 3 as introducing an argument and then responding to an argument. The bulk of your essay should come in your response. The title of the essay is Responding to an Argument. However, before you can really respond to an argument so that a reader understands it, you have to introduce that initial argument. To do this, we'll start where we start all academic essays with an introduction paragraph. And the introduction paragraph should tell the reader what the topic of your essay is, the idea that you are going to respond to. It's important to remember in the introduction that the people who are reading your essay probably have not closely read or ever read the article that you're responding to. So you can't just jump in the introduction talking about this article. You have to first find a way to hook or engage your reader in a way that they will become interested in the topic. Then they'll stay engaged as they read the rest of your piece. So the introduction should really introduce the topic. So if you're responding to the argument that the author made about the high cost of going to college and the problems with college debt, then in your introduction you would want to introduce the cost of college and debt, and maybe even do a tiny little bit of outside research to incorporate in the introduction that can just get a reader interested in the idea of the cost of going to college or the kind of debt that people end up with after they finish college. After the introduction, you'll move on to the summary. Now, the summary should come second after you've introduced the main idea that your paper is going to be about, and it should only be a paragraph long. Some of you wrote incredibly short summaries that were like 1 or 2 sentences. Some of you wrote these really long summaries that were more than half of your paper. And while I understand that it's difficult to take a really long article and condense it into something that's only a paragraph long, the focus of our essay needs to be on how you're responding to that argument, not the argument itself. So we only need to give the readers of your essay a little snippet of that original argument. Your summary needs to be a summary in that somebody who sees it on a page will say, hey, this is just a summary of somebody else's ideas. This isn't the author's ideas. So what you should do is give us a rhetorical cue. Tell us with how you're setting this paragraph up that what we're going to read is a summary. To do this, you should start with a sentence that tells us who the author is, the title of the piece, where, and maybe even when the piece was originally published. So you might have something like, in 1987, Barb Kirchmeier wrote a piece entitled How to Write an Essay, and it was published in College Composition. This kind of sentence gives readers a cue that what's going to follow in that paragraph will be details about the piece you just introduced. Remember to not give any of your opinions in the summary. This is really easy to do because we're used to saying things like, oh, Barb does a really bad job introducing ideas that I can agree with, right? We say things like, does a bad job or does a good job. You might even say something like, it's really easy to read this article, or it's too long, I can't keep up with it. So our opinions start to sneak in. In our summary, we want no opinions at all. Our goal, like I said, is to be about 1 paragraph in length. Between 200 and 250 words is pretty good for a summary. And make sure you're using attributive tags. Phrases like Barb says, or Smith alludes to, or Johnson claims. These kinds of attributive tags help the reader remember that these are not your ideas, but you are citing the ideas of other folks. There is a fantastic section in our Allen and Bacon Guide to Writing called Understanding Summary Writing. If you haven't looked at that yet, please go in and look at it. It was a reading that we did before spring break, but it's important that you follow all of the different ideas that are presented in this section of our textbook in order to have a correctly written summary. The next section of your essay may be a rhetorical analysis. We didn't focus very much on this requirement in our previous discussions of this assignment, so if you don't have a rhetorical analysis section, it'll be okay. If you do decide to have a rhetorical analysis section, it's going to be short as well. It's just a quick snippet where you get a chance to say, hey, readers, I read this article. Here's how the author of this article constructed an argument and kind of how it made me believe or not believe the overall argument. So this would be a chance for you to say, in this piece about why sports should be a college major, the author really relied heavily on pathos or evoking an emotional response from the reader. This was a successful ploy. As I finished reading this essay, I believed that that sports should be a major in college. Right? So that allows you to connect your response to the rhetorical construction of the original argument. Like I said, we didn't talk very much about this, so you don't have to do this in your paper, but if you want to, it is a very nice way to bridge the summary and what comes next, which is your thesis. And your thesis could end up being its own paragraph, even if it's just one really long sentence. The thesis should be in two parts. First, it should state your argument, something like, I agree that sports should be a major in college, and then include the reasons why. So I believe that sports, or I agree that sports should be a major in college, and here's why, and then list those reasons out. Listing these reasons out helps you as a writer remember what you're going to write about later in the essay, but more than that, it helps the reader understand what your purpose is and how you're going to prove that purpose. It gives them context for the remainder of your essay. So after this point, we're probably about a page and a half into your essay, right? So that means that the rest of the essay has to focus on your response to the argument that you just summarized. So what comes next are a collection of sections, which I like to think about maybe even as paragraphs, that relate back to that thesis. So in your thesis, if you say, I agree with this argument, then in this section, the response section of your essay, you'll need one paragraph for each reason that you agree with the original argument that was presented. Now, if you find that you have lots of reasons, try to narrow it down to the ones that most relate to the original argument. If you find that you don't have a lot of reasons why you believe what you believe or how you want to respond, then make sure that you are taking those couple of reasons and really spending the time to expand on them. Something that might be worth doing here is if you want to say, I really believe in this and I agree with the author and here are my reasons, and maybe you have a reason that the original author didn't bring up, it's okay for you to go and do a brief amount of research to help explain to your readers why this argument is one that you believe in. Likewise, you might find yourself saying, I don't agree with the author because I don't really think that people take out so many college loans, for example. Then you would need to do a little bit of research and back up the claim that you're making there. We'll end the essay with a conclusion. Now, we did a great reading about conclusions for this class this week, so make sure if you haven't done so, you look back at the readings that I posted on Monday and read about conclusions. But the conclusion should wrap up your response. So we keep the conclusion in the response materials section of this essay. So what we can do is we can pop back and we can look at this as a full outline. Introduction paragraph, develop some context, let us know what this piece is all about in general. Move on to your summary, where you introduce and summarize the argument that an author has made about this topic already. Maybe give us a little bit of rhetorical analysis that connects how that author constructed his or her argument and how that affected you. Jump into your thesis, where you make your argument clear. Do you agree, do you disagree, or do you both agree and disagree with the original author's argument, including the reasons why? Then we get into the bulk of the essay, which is your response, where you have one section, maybe one paragraph, for each one of the reasons that you've introduced in your thesis. And again, it's okay to bring in a little bit of research here if you need to do that in order to really explain your reason. And then we'll conclude the essay by looking back at our own response to the original argument. While the majority of the problems in people's drafts were related to the format and the organization of the piece, things to think about as you are preparing your final draft include MLA formatting, titles, and citations. Many of you have looked at the How to Format Your Essay for English 101 documents that have been posted with Essay 1 and Essay 2 final draft assignment Dropboxes. There's another one posted on the Essay 3 assignment Dropbox in this Sunday's folder, so feel free to jump on and look at those things for more information about MLA formatting. If you have questions about MLA formatting, please don't hesitate to email me, and what might help me is if you attach to that email a copy of your essay and then say, I have questions about MLA, am I doing it right? And then I can give you feedback on your draft that you emailed to me specifically about MLA. About half of you are missing a title on your draft, which is not a big deal at rough draft time, but it is something to think about as you're preparing your final draft. We need those titles. Again, for the reading that we did in class this week, we looked at information about how to write effective titles. So if you haven't done that reading from Allen and Beckett this week, make sure you go back into it and look for information about title writing. And finally, we need to make sure that you're including citations within your essay. Anytime you quote or paraphrase an idea that is not yours, you need to cite it. So you need to use those in-text citations. In addition, you should use a works cited page at the end of your essay. Now, I know that many of you are already doing these things and you're doing them very well, but I also understand that some of you may not feel very confident with this. So again, if you want me to take a look specifically at your in-text citations or your works cited page, attach a copy of your draft with this work done as best as you can and email it to me, asking me in the body of the email to look specifically at your citations or your works cited page. There are also some kind of editing mistakes that a number of you are making in all the essays that you've written for class, as well as some of the daily work. So some of these errors include capitalization. Words like Facebook are coming up in this piece again. Remember, those are proper nouns, so we need to capitalize them. Yet the word author, so if you're saying the author of this article is, author is not a proper noun, so it does not need to be capitalized. So watch out for capitalization errors. Also watch out for plurals versus possessives. A number of people do not use the apostrophe in the possessive form, and we just need to do that. I've pointed out on your drafts if you have trouble with this kind of error, but if you're not quite sure what I mean or you need a little additional help, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Another thing that I've seen come up are homonyms, words that sound the same but are spelled differently and have different meanings. Those are coming up in quite a few people's drafts. Just make sure that before you submit a final draft, you actually sit down and read through it. One of the best ways to do this is to read your essay backwards. So starting with the final sentence of your essay, read it out loud to yourself, and then read the next to last sentence and then the third to last sentence. What this allows you to do is to take the sentence out of context, and it will allow you to find strange little errors in your piece that your brain will normally fix if you're reading the sentences in order. Incomplete sentences have been another problem for quite a few people. Make sure that your sentence has a subject, a verb, and an object. Which is just the standard American way of writing sentences. But frequently we don't have complete sentences in our writing. And I think that probably happens because as we're typing very quickly, especially in an online class, we just hit the wrong button and some autocorrect magic happens and all of a sudden we have 2 incomplete sentences. I've marked on your essays throughout the semester if I think you have a problem with this. So if I've marked something on a previous essay, make sure that you're looking for it in this essay as well, because chances are these are just little quirks that you will need to look for a long time. Also, make sure that you've introduced and attributed your sources, right? We don't want to be accused of plagiarism or any kind of academic dishonesty. So to avoid that, we'll make sure that we are introducing and attributing our sources. If you have any questions as you are working on your final draft, don't hesitate to email me. My email address is here and it's posted all over our Blackboard site. So please do reach out to me. Like I said, if you have specific questions, please attach a copy of your draft, and then in the body of the email, let me know what you want me to look for, and I'd be happy to give you some feedback that way. Another thing you can do is if you're on campus, you can drop by my office hours. I have office hours Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10:30 to 11:30, but I'm oftentimes on campus all day Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. So if you want to come by, just send me a note and we'll find a time for you to come and visit. Finally, you can make an appointment with the Writing Center. The website address is here on this slide. You will be able to make an appointment to meet with a tutor face-to-face, or if you're not on the Moscow campus, you can make arrangements to meet electronically with a tutor. Either way will work great for getting feedback. Make sure when you go into a tutoring session, though, that you have an idea of what kind of help you're looking for. So at this point, I've given most people feedback on the drafts that they've turned in of SA3, so you might have questions based on my feedback, and it might be good to have those questions prepared to talk to the Writing Center tutors that you end up meeting with. Overall, I was very pleased with the drafts of SA3. You're all on the right track. You all did good close readings of the pieces that you are responding to, and that's usually the most difficult thing in this assignment. So great work there. Please do let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to reading your final drafts on Sunday.